Alright, let's rewind to August 27, 1776. Picture this. The American Revolution is in full swing. Just weeks after declaring independence, George Washington and his newly formed Continental Army are about to face their biggest test yet. They're up against the mighty British Army in the first major battle since breaking free from Britain, the Battle of Long Island. Here's the deal. The stakes are huge. If Washington can hold off the British, he'll show the world that the Americans have a fighting chance. But if he loses, it could all be over before the revolution even gets off the ground. Today, we're diving deep into this intense showdown, where Washington's army found itself outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and almost out of hope. To understand how we got to this massive battle on Long Island, let's back up a bit. By the summer of 1776, the American colonies were done with British rule. They had just signed the Declaration of Independence and everyone's hyped up on the idea of freedom. But with independence declared, the British were ready to fight back and prove that the colonies could never break away. In July, the British launched a full-scale invasion, sending one of the largest military fleets the world had ever seen to the colonies. Led by General William Howe, over 30,000 British soldiers landed on Staten Island, New York. Their goal? Crush the Continental Army, capture New York, and end this rebellion once and for all. Washington knew he had to defend New York. It was a strategic location, a key to controlling the colonies. But his army was outmatched in every way: fewer men, less experience, and way fewer supplies. Washington knew the odds were against him, but he couldn't just let the British march in uncontested. So, he set up defensive positions across Brooklyn and prepared to face the British Army head-on. Alright, now we get into the action. It's August 27th and things are about to go down. The British come in with a bold plan to surround the Continental Army. While Washington's forces are spread out across the Brooklyn Heights, Howe decides to pull a sneaky move, sending his troops on a secret path around the American defenses. Early in the morning, the British launch a surprise attack on the American left flank, hitting Washington's forces from both the front and the rear. The Americans are caught off guard, and chaos erupts. Troops are scrambling, trying to hold their ground, but they're completely outmaneuvered. As the British advance, Washington can only watch as his men get pushed back, retreating further and further toward the East River. Now here's where things get really intense. With his army cornered on Brooklyn Heights and the British closing in, Washington makes a daring call. Instead of fighting to the last man, he decides on a bold, risky plan: a midnight evacuation. The idea is to get his entire army across the East River, slipping right past the British and regroup in Manhattan. So, in the dead of night, Washington and his men begin the Great Escape. Boats silently cross the river, carrying soldiers, cannons, and supplies. It's all happening under cover of darkness, and as dawn approaches, they're still going, racing against time. But here's the crazy part. Just as the sun starts to rise, a thick fog rolls in, shrouding the American forces and hiding them from the British. By some stroke of luck, or maybe fate, the fog stays long enough for Washington's entire army to make it across. When the British finally realize what's happened, they're stunned. Washington has pulled off one of the greatest escapes in military history, saving his army and keeping the hope of independence alive. So, what's the big deal with the Battle of Long Island? On the surface, it was a loss for Washington's army. They couldn't hold Brooklyn and they had to retreat. But the real story here is the escape. Washington's decision to pull back and live to fight another day was a game changer. It showed that the Continental Army wasn't going to go down easy and that they could be just as clever, just as strategic as the British. This battle also taught Washington some valuable lessons. He learned that the British were not to be underestimated and that open field battles might not be the way to win. After this, he would lean more on guerrilla tactics, surprise attacks, and hit-and-run strategies, all moves that would eventually frustrate the British and keep the revolution alive. Today, the Battle of Long Island doesn't always get the spotlight, but it's a defining moment in American history. This wasn't a victory in the traditional sense, but it was a testament to Washington's leadership, his courage under fire, and his commitment to the cause. The escape across the East River became a legend, a story of daring and determination that inspired Americans then and still resonates today. Long Island reminds us of the power of resilience, of finding a way even when things seem impossible. It's a story of survival, of grit, and of a leader who refused to give up. Washington's bold choices in this battle would shape the way he approached the rest of the war, ultimately leading to victory and independence. So here's the big takeaway. The Battle of Long Island isn't just about troops, tactics, or territory, it's about the spirit of the American Revolution. Washington's army faced impossible odds, and instead of surrendering, they fought with everything they had. And when the time came, they found a way to escape and live to fight another day. This story is a reminder that setbacks don't have to be the end. Sometimes it's the courage to keep going, to adapt, and to take risks that makes all the difference. The Battle of Long Island was America's wake-up call, a moment that proved just how tough they would have to be to win this war. And in the end, that toughness is what made all the difference. Thanks for coming along for this dive into the Battle of Long Island. If you're into these kinds of epic, gritty stories from history, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, stay curious, and keep exploring the stories that make us who we are.